All right, so we'll bring you to our question of the day a little bit later on, but let's go to this particular story now. Looking at the President's economic recovery plan, which is expected to be unveiled in Parliament tomorrow. So it's expected that President Ramaphosa's economic recovery plan to be announced tomorrow will centre around the need for infrastructure investments. So the strained government finances and growing debt are also expected to top the agenda as government figures out a way of the depressed levels the local economy is in. So the President has called for this joint sitting of Parliament tomorrow. It's expected he will also deal with, amongst others, the 2.2 million people who lost their jobs in the second quarter. So one of the biggest casualties of COVID-19 pandemic was the small and medium enterprises sector. But let's talk a bit about the politics ahead of that sitting. Anne Bernstein, the Executive Director, Centre for Development and Enterprise, joins me now live. A very good evening to you, Anne. Thanks indeed for your time. So without a doubt, the President needs to take the country into his confidence, I guess. His administration is tainted with corruption and the citizenry is becoming quite restless.
I think the important thing, he needs to be honest about how difficult the situation is for the country, for unemployment, the fiscal crisis, the lack of growth. We're in a very difficult situation. And for my money, the key is that he has to establish credibility. We need some clear priorities and we need confidence that what he promises is actually going to happen.
But obviously, Anne, isn't it that he would need to show, for one example, that, he's in charge of his fractured political party by the looks of what we've been seeing lately. And he will also need to have the buy-in, as you've already alluded to quite shortly, of, amongst others, the opposition and the unions in order for him to implement these plans.
Everyone behind him. So I think we've got to distinguish between this endless desire for talking, and eventually you end up with the lowest common denominator, which might get everyone on the same page but doesn't help the country progress. I am looking for leadership. I'm looking for some bold decisions in the right direction that helps South Africa recover and get growth going. And that doesn't require everybody to agree immediately. It requires leadership and a vision for South Africa and some clear priorities that restore credibility to this government that we believe that they're going to actually get done. So I can't emphasize that enough. And then the key is going to be what priorities are on the table. We have, as you mentioned, a massive welfare and unemployment situation. I was describing the crisis before COVID as an unbelievable crisis, one of the worst in the world in terms of unemployment. I think it's now catastrophic. So what are we going to do about this in the short term and in the next few months? How are we going to get growth going again? How do we deal with our fiscal crisis? It's vital that we don't add more pressure to our budget where we're already the single largest item on the budget is repaying our debt. And this, in a way, the past is eating the future for South Africa. So we need to see a firm hand on the tiller, a vision for the country, and some decisions that might cause some opposition. But the President has to show leadership for South Africa to build a bridge out of the disaster that we're facing.
And obviously the President clearly might not be able to please everyone, but what would then be some of those, perhaps maybe 3 or 4 key priorities that he would need to set tomorrow that I guess would save face for his administration and also for the leadership that you speak so strongly of, for him to show that he is in charge?
I have no doubt he is in charge, but it's how far he's prepared to go. So I think the key priorities are a real sense of urgency about the energy situation and getting South Africa going much faster in the right direction. We need to recognize how weak and corrupt the state is And we have to free up private actors and NGOs and civil society to use their capacity to help South Africa in many different directions. We're a very over-regulated economy, and that's partly dampening our prospects for growth. We have to do something about the welfare and unemployment situation, and he has talked of an employment stimulus. We need to see what is going to come in terms of that, but this is all going to be very difficult. So I also think the last thing is bold and decisive about the unbelievable drain on our economy of very badly run and weak state-owned enterprises. We need the services they're supposed to provide, but these institutions in the main are not doing that. And we need some decisions about how we're going to proceed in this direction. We don't want to hear about more talking, more councils, more task teams. We have to look and see some actual decisions that are really important. One of the key things I'm really interested in terms of unemployment is the expanded tax incentive. I think this is an important issue. I'm hoping it will be expanded to more workers and for a longer period. That would be an important move forward. But we also need to see what's going to come in terms of this employment stimulus. Yeah. What's vital for the country is that we don't get lots of big words, big promises, lots of big numbers thrown around, and we don't then deliver. We've tried this before. In 2018, this president came with an economic stimulus, which was not that. Yeah. So you've got to be careful to distinguish between the marketing rhetoric and what is actually being put on the table, and can they deliver?
Anne, always a pleasure speaking to you. Anne Bernstein, the Executive Director of Centre for Development and Enterprise, of course, ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's sitting in Parliament tomorrow. That economic recovery plan, what exactly is the plan going forward as a result of the impact of COVID-19? How do you get the economy up and running once again? But of course, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on the program. So later in the show, we'll chat to Labour analyst Mamokgethi